Welcome back to Ships of War. Today, we are looking at not just which guns hit the hardest, but which could survive doing it longest. Some weapons delivered incredible power, but wore out quickly. So the question is simple: which navy got it right? Which battleship guns could punch hard and last long enough to matter out at sea? And by the end of this video, we'll compare them all, side by side, and give our verdict on the most effective battleship gun of the entire era. This is based on extensive research across naval records, ordnance reports, and historical analysis. And if you want to explore the sources yourself, you'll find them all linked in the description below. Let's begin. The Imperial Japanese Navy developed the largest battleship guns of the Second World War. These were mounted on the Yamato class, which carried 9 of these Type 94 guns. At 18.1 inches in caliber, they remain the largest naval guns to ever exist. Each gun fired a shell weighing roughly 1,460 kilograms at a muzzle velocity of around 780 meters per second. This gave the weapon very high striking power and the ability to engage targets at extreme range. In design terms, these guns pushed the upper limits of what naval artillery could achieve. Their size, weight, and energy placed significant stress on the barrel during firing. As a result, their service life was far shorter than most contemporary battleship guns, estimated at roughly 200 to 250 full-charge rounds. Like all large naval guns, were gradually reduced muzzle velocity and increased dispersion over time. With these guns, that process occurred far more quickly due to the scale of the forces involved. Japanese construction methods also differed in some respects. While other navies commonly replaced liners, Japanese practice often involved replacing large sections of the barrel, or even the entire barrel. During their service, the 46-centimeter guns represented the most extreme example of battleship artillery design. They were built for the same purpose as all battleship guns, to engage and destroy heavily armored targets, but they did so at a scale unmatched. The Italian Navy equipped its modern battleships with the 381mm Ansaldo guns. These guns were mounted on the Littorio class, including Littorio, Vittorio Veneto, and Roma. Each gun fired an armor-piercing shell at a relatively high muzzle velocity. In design terms, the Italian 381mm gun emphasized velocity and ballistic performance. Service life figures vary by source, but they fall within the general range of a few hundred full-charge rounds, comparable to other major navies. The guns were constructed with liners and followed standard maintenance practices, including inspection, measurement of wear, and replacement when required. In service, the Italian 381mm guns delivered high-velocity fire and had strong ballistic performance, operating within the same overall life cycle constraints as other battleship artillery of the period. France approached battleship gunnery with a mix of innovation and limitation. Unlike the larger naval powers, France had to balance performance with treaty restrictions and industrial constraints. Their most famous ships, the Richelieu class, including Richelieu and Jean Bart, carried a very distinctive weapon layout. All main guns mounted forward in 2 quadruple turrets, each holding 4 380mm guns. This gave them immense forward firepower but also introduced complexity. These 380mm guns were powerful and modern, designed for high velocity and strong armor penetration. But like many high-performance guns, they paid for it in wear. While exact barrel life figures are less consistently documented, estimates place them broadly in the same range as other major navies, a few hundred full-charge rounds before relining or replacement. France used liners, and much like Britain and the United States, relied on dockyard maintenance to restore performance. But their real challenge was not the gun itself. It was the turret design. Quadruple mounts increased mechanical strain, heat concentration, and operational complexity. In theory, highly efficient; in practice, fragile. French guns were powerful and advanced. but they were part of a system that pushed engineering limits in other ways. The Royal Navy relied heavily on one of the most famous naval guns ever built. The BL 15-inch Mark I, introduced during the First World War. It armed some of the most legendary ships during the age of the big gun battleships. HMS Warspite alone would become one of the most decorated battleships in history, her guns firing in multiple wars, across multiple decades. That alone tells you something about their design. These guns had a service life of around 335 full-charge rounds. And when the guns wore down, they were relined in dockyards, often returning them to near original condition. This allowed the same weapons to remain effective over a long service life, across different conflicts and multiple decades. The United States, power with predictability. For the United States Navy, the goal was balance. Not just building powerful guns, but building a system that could sustain them through a long war. They were part of some of the most famous battleships ever built. Ships like Iowa, New Jersey, Missouri, and Wisconsin carried the famous 16-inch guns into the final years of World War II and beyond. Capable of striking targets over 30 kilometers away, firing shells with devastating force, and doing so with remarkable consistency. But every shot came at a cost. The Mark VII could fire around 290 full-power rounds before needing a new liner. The Americans carefully tracked something called equivalent full charges, a precise system that measured how much life a gun had left. Every shot was recorded and every barrel monitored, and when the limit was reached, the liner was replaced, restoring the gun to near new condition. American guns were not allowed to fail, they were managed too well. They were the US Navy's symbols of industrial power and precision engineering. German battleship guns were built around not just long-range duels, but fast, decisive engagements in difficult conditions. The clearest example of this is the Bismarck and her 38cm SKCR-34 guns. When Bismarck opened fire during the Battle of the Denmark Strait, she found her range quickly. Within minutes, her salvos were straddling British ships. One of those shells detonated HMS Hood. That moment tells you more about these guns than any specification sheet. They were accurate early, and they worked as part of a well-integrated fire control system. Technically, the German 38cm gun followed a different approach. It fired a lighter shell than the British 15-inch gun, but at little higher velocity. This gave it a flatter trajectory and shorter time to target, which could make ranging easier in fast-moving engagements. It also meant more stress on the barrel, which kept its lifespan to around 300 full-charge rounds, right in line with other major navies. Three guns stand out when looking at dependability and sustained performance. Ranked from the lowest of the three to the most reliable. First, the German 38cm gun. Mounted on the Bismarck class, it delivered consistent and predictable performance in service. With a barrel life of around 300 full-charge rounds, it sat comfortably within the expected range for a weapon of its size. It did not push extremes, but it performed reliably within its limits. Next, the British 15-inch. Used on ships such as the Queen Elizabeth class, this gun proved itself over an unusually long service life. With roughly 330 full-charge rounds and decades of operational use, it demonstrated consistent performance across multiple conflicts. Its reliability was not just measured in numbers, but in how long it remained in effective service. And finally, the most dependable of the three. The American 16-inch 45. Mounted on ships like the Iowa class, it combined heavy firepower with one of the longest barrel lives of the war, approaching 400 full-charge rounds. Supported by an effective liner system and well-developed maintenance practices, it was built for sustained firing without rapid degradation. These were the guns that held their performance. Not just for a few salvos, but across the fight. Shot after shot, as the barrels wore and the pressure built. They continued to deliver where it mattered. From the gun decks to the bridge, every story we tell honors those who served. If this tale made you feel the salt and steel of history, give it a like, and if you're not yet part of our channel's convoy, subscribe and join the ranks. More powerful stories await.